Hey guys, this is Neverending Reader and I'm Brittany and welcome to my super really late May wrap up. So if you're wondering why I'm not in front of my bookcase and I am on my bed, it is because I just ate a ton of fire ramen noodles and my tummy hurts, so I'm just going to sit in this bed and talk to you guys about the books that I read in May. So the first book that I read in the month of May was Made You Up by Francesca Zappia. I read this for Mental Health-a-thon. And this had schizophrenia representation. So this follows a girl named Alex, and she has to go to a new high school for whatever reasons. You don't really find out until later in the book, but when she's there, she's suffering from hallucinations, and she actually meets a boy that she thinks she remembers from her past. But the event from where she remembers him from her past, she's been told was like a complete and total hallucination. So she's like, I don't know if I knew him, if I'm hallucinating him now, type of thing. So this book I ended up really loving. I can't speak for the schizophrenia representation, but I thought that it was like really intriguing. I love the sibling dynamics in this like so much. Her and her sister were just so cute. I love that there was a lot of focus on history because Miles and Alex are both like big history buffs and I enjoy history as well, so I really enjoyed that part of the book. I loved that we were following Alex's perspective because at times it got a little bit spooky and eerie, but that's because that's what she was living through at the moment, and I thought that that atmosphere was just like really intriguing to me. And I also liked her like kind of niche and friend group that she ended up getting into. They were all like very kind and understanding and welcoming, which is not like the typical high school experience you get in young adult. I also love that the writing style in this was very fast paced and it has super short chapters, which is like a big thing for me because I can just fly through a book with short chapters. I feel like, oh yeah, I'll just read one more and then one more and then one more and then I finished it. So I think this writing style plus having short chapters just made this book like absolutely fly by, which I always super appreciate in book. There was like kind of a mystery in this book that I didn't think was very logical, or maybe it was just lost on me, but I got really confused about it like multiple times and I'm still not even sure what happened with that mystery. So with that being said, I really loved the love story, I loved the characters, I loved the mental health representation, and I didn't love like this weird mystery thing that they had going on. So for that reason, I probably would give it like 4-ish stars. But you may notice if you have me added on Goodreads, I'm not actually rating books anymore. So me saying that this is 4 stars, I'm not going to put that on Goodreads. I just wrote up my review and left it at no rating, which is a whole other video in itself about why I'm not rating. But for the purpose of this video, I would say like 4-ish stars. The next book that I read in the month of May was And I Darken by Kirsten White. This was one of my TBR jar picks and I am literally shook because it ended up being my favorite book of the entire year, which I was so not expecting. So this is actually a gender swapped Vlad the Impaler retelling, and I don't really know anything about that portion of history kind of, so reading this and then like going back on my phone and like researching information, it was just really fun. And our main character, Lada, I believe that's how you pronounce it, she is actually like Vlad, and we follow her like growing up, and she is just this feral little beast of a child, and I absolutely loved her so much. I thought the way that this book was written was so enticing, and the political system of it was just so much fun. Like I actually learned like a whole lot reading this, and then I learned a lot further when I did more research. But I thought that the royal like intrigue, the politics, Lada just being this like total nightmare of a child was so much fun. Lada also had this little brother named Radu, I believe his name was, and they're just like complete opposites. So where Lada is like bold and intense, Radu is like sensitive and he's like thoughtful and strategic, and I just loved them both together. I loved that they like had this weird sibling relationship to where they fought a lot, but they were like ride or die for each other at the end of the day. And so I really loved that part. I also loved how Lada was like so patriotic to her country. She ended up being like taken out of her country by her father and like given to like a different king as kind of like a prisoner, kind of. I believe it was more like collateral type of thing, but she was just like so patriotic for her home country, like, and I really respected that. And then Radu, her little brother, I really loved that he struggled with kind of converting his religion to the religion of where he basically grew up rather than his like home country. And also following his journey to like understanding his own sexuality was really intense, and I just could cry thinking about these two characters. I love them so fucking much. This book just like checked all of my marks for like my own personal reading preferences, and so it's absolutely my favorite thing that I've read this entire year. I also read Belzar by Meg Wolitzer. I believe this followed a girl named Jam, and she is like grieving the loss of her ex-boyfriend, and so she's sent to this like therapeutic boarding school. But when she gets there, they're like, yeah, you're gonna be in this like special English class, and it's run by this woman who like picks one author, and then they like basically study that author for the entire like class or semester. And the author that they were studying this time was Sylvia Plath. So like this should have been my favorite book because one, it had a boarding school, which is like my favorite thing in books, and also Sylvia Plath, which is also my favorite. But this ended up being like a total fucking dumpster fire, and I don't like it at all. I'm absolutely going to be unhauling this. The characters were just had no personality at all, which really sucked. The setting wasn't described like very well, which also sucked because boarding school settings are my favorite. There could have been like a pretty good mental health representation with this plot, and there was not, which really sucked. And there was like a little bit of mystery to this book, and so that was like what was really keeping me hooked, is like I had to know what the mystery of this book was. And at the end, I've never been more underwhelmed in my entire life. So for me, this is a pretty bad book, and I'm actually going to unhaul it. And if you were wondering, I gave And I Darken 5 stars in my own personal head, not on Goodreads, and I gave Belzar in my head like a 2-star because it was not problematic, so I didn't want to like internally bump it down to a 1-star, but yeah, that's my explanation. I also buddy read with Sophie Illuminae by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. I also read the other book with Sophie. The second book was called Gemina. So this one I read, obviously, this copy of it. It is mixed media. It was such a fun time. But the second book I actually read on my Kindle and like followed along with the audiobook. So if you're wanting to read this book, I cannot recommend the audiobook enough. It was an entirely different experience listening to Gemina rather than just reading Illuminae. So as far as Illuminae goes, this was about the couple, Ezra and Katie, and they're actually like exes, and something happens on their planet to where they literally have to like escape and like run away. And so it's like them running away from these like bad guys named Baytek, I think it was, and it was just a really good ass time. I don't even have that much to say about this or Gemina other than, one, you have to listen to the audiobook. It was incredible. I thought it was a really good like young adult sci-fi. Some of the sci-fi elements I thought were like not as good as they could have been. I've read a lot of sci-fi in my days. Well, not a lot, but like a pretty decent amount, and I felt like this book and Gemina, compared to other sci-fi novels that I've read, their like logical explanations of like the sciencey aspects was kind of bad compared to the other ones I've read, but I still had a whole lot of fun with this and Gemina. Sometimes I did get confused, but it was totally worth it. I mean, just the illustrations alone in this was so much fun. I'm not going to explain Gemina because it's the second book and I don't want to like spoil anything on accident, but just know that I really enjoyed both of them, and I think I ended up giving them both like a 4-star in my brain. Gemina was probably closer to a 5-star, to be honest, and that's only because I was stupid and didn't read the audiobook for this. I really should have. Sophie also sent me The Bride Test by Helen Huang, and I read this last month and it was so cute and pure and good. So this follows Kai and Esme, and Kai's mom is like, you're not like doing so well in the love department, so I'm literally going to like travel to a different country and like find you a wife, which happened to be Esme. And Kai is like super not on board, but he's trying to get his mom off his back, so he's like, okay, like Esme can stay with me, it's fine, like we'll just see what happens. And this was just the cutest romance ever. I really liked how it was like the American dream type of thing. Like Esme really was like living her best life. She was like a strong female lead. She was doing her best, and she like really understood Kai, or like at least tried to understand him and see where he was coming from. She was super supportive, and I don't know, I loved them together so much. I will read anything that this author writes. I don't care what it's about. It was such a fun time. This and The Kiss Quotient are like my favorite romances ever. So yeah, I really, really, really enjoyed this one. I also read Girl Interrupted by Susanna Kaysen. This is one of my favorite movies of all time, and it follows a girl named Susanna. This is like a memoir, and Susanna is in a mental institution because she has borderline personality disorder and she was suicidal. I ended up not liking this memoir at all. It kind of like time hopped around to where it was like 1 year and then it was another, and then like somebody had died, but then in the next chapter they were alive, because it was all jumbled up, like the timing. And so I really hated that part. I thought the movie was like significantly better, and I don't like rating people's lives, so I like rarely rate nonfiction or memoirs, and for that reason I'm not going to say anything, but just know that I didn't think that this was worth it by any means, and I'll probably be getting rid of this because I don't see myself reaching for it or recommending it in the future. And the last book that I read in the month of May was Impulse by Ellen Hopkins. This ended up being absolute shit. Just to be honest, I wouldn't give this more than a 1-star. I wouldn't even give this a 1-star if I was on Goodreads. I thought this was bullshit. This follows like 3 teenagers, and they were all suicidal or had tried to commit suicide, and so they're in this like mental institution trying to get better. And I thought the way that Ellen Hopkins wrote this was so bad and so misleading. There could have been so much potential to teach readers about like mental health and mental illnesses and like trying to get better, going to therapy, all of that, and this just ended up being not that. There was this really weird love triangle. There was like kind of the trope where it was like, love will make me feel better, and like love cures depression, and it's just, it was not good. It was super misleading. It was like Ellen Hopkins like wrote down like a bunch of like controversial like subjects for teenagers, and then threw them all into like a bag and like picked out a bunch of them and just like threw them in a book, because it was like, oh yeah, we have a gay character, check, we have like, you know, a suicidal character, this type of controversial subject, and none of it actually tied together. I thought it was really bad. I would never recommend this to anybody. So for that reason, I'm going to get rid of it. So that is it for this month. I'm sorry this video is so late. We had some really good books that I read, and then 3 that I plan on unhauling. So I don't know what that says about this month. At least I did find my favorite book of the year, so I'm pretty hyped about that. And since I'm filming this so late in the month, I already know that my June wrap-up's gonna be pretty good, so I can't wait for you guys to see that one. If you guys have read any of these books, please let me know in the comments down below, or any of my social media. It'll be in the description box somewhere, and I will catch you guys in my next video. Bye!